Coach Skinn, welcome to the basketball podcast.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you for having me on.
It's tremendous to have you on. Certainly in referencing the success over the 2 years you've been there, just tremendous. But let's go back to where it all began. You were a player, you went to the Final Four with the program. Obviously, you went away and you came back. So, can you help us understand how much this means to you to be back at George Mason?
Yeah, no, it means everything to me. When I signed up to come to George Mason and made that decision back in 2003, I would have never guessed that 24, 23 plus years later, I'd be sitting at the helm here at my alma mater. It's been a blessing when giving that opportunity again from a playing at George Mason to having a chance to play professionally to then pivoting into coaching. It was never really a part of my plan. And just being in the right position and in the right place and an opportunity came. And I was fortunately given that opportunity and just really just made the most of it here in the first 2 years.
You've definitely made the most of it. Tied a lot of records, broke a lot of records for the first 2 years in the history of the A10 and certainly your school as well. So maybe beyond the players, which we know are the key part of all this, but beyond that, what are some of the keys that kind of have put this program on this trajectory this early?
I'll always say, I always give credit to my staff. My staff means everything to me. There's certain things that we all have our strong points in, and certain things that we can always learn from, different people that have been in different places. And I put together a really dynamic staff, starting with Steve Kern, who was at St. Bonaventure for almost 13 years. Didn't think I could pull him from St. Bonaventure to George Mason, but he made that decision, and that was one of the best decisions that I think he made because he's helped us tremendously. But then being able to add on Mike Econom, who's now in our first year, he's now at University of Houston as an assistant, tells you the type of coach that he is. Adding Lewis Hinnott, who is a local DMV guy who played at the highest level and has really grinded his way through college basketball with some success over at UMass Lowell. And so putting together a dynamic staff like that, it makes my job a lot easier just because we're always on the same page. At times we agree to disagree, but it's always for the greater good of our players. And then obviously you just throw in the recruitment side, being able to evaluate not just the competitive player, but then also the type of character that we're putting in our locker room. All those things have to mesh, and I think it's been a big reason why we've been successful.
Absolutely. And another big reason is the defense coach. Did you consider yourself a defensive coach coming into it?
Yes and no. Yes, just because for me, when you think about just your coaching culture, philosophy, I've always been a very blue collar type of guy. I'm 6 feet on my best day. And so toughness was for me as a player, it was a non-negotiable if I wanted to be successful. And so I'm always encouraging my team. And I knew that I wanted my team to take on that personality of just being an everyday guy mindset. And just early on with the way we press, our Patriot Pressure, it came alive better than I thought, and we just stuck with it. And it's really been who we've been.
Can you give us a brief outline of what Patriot Pressure is, and then we'll dive into some of the details?
Yeah, it's a mindset. It's a defensive mindset. It's our energizer, essentially, whether we're full court pressing, whether it's a zone press, just finding different ways to get to an elite parameter of how hard we play. Patriot Pressure has also become something that our fans and our supporters have embodied with the energy they bring into our building. It's a tough place to play. We've been pretty good at home. And so safe to say 2 years in a row now, Patriot Pressure has it's been a success. So it's something that's going to continue.
It's been a success, and the aggression and the pressure that you put on teams, you've also been able to balance that with not being a high foul team in terms of being able to contain a little bit of that aggression as well. Can you talk to us about how you've been able to get your team to be able to do that?
Yeah, when you practice as hard as we practice every single day, I say it all the time. When you come to a George Mason practice with guys like Jared Billups, who was Defensive Player of the Year, with guys like Katie Johnson, who he was as tough on the ball and off the ball as I've coached in a long time. When you have guys like that have to compete against each other Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, there's a lot of fouls. But we try to draw the line in these guys understanding that parameter and that fine balance of how hard we have to play, but also how much within the lines we have to be. And sometimes once a team becomes or embodies a certain type of physicality, a certain type of intensity, sometimes you get away with probably being a little bit too physical. And we try to just make sure that's a consistent thing, regardless of who the opponent is, but also drawing that line every single day in practice that, hey, man, that's a foul. You can't do that. And our guys have been really sharp with just understanding what that threshold is.
The more you foul, the more you get away with, of course. And that's a part of the mindset. And I can see you smiling and you love that part of it. And no doubt that that goes back to who you were as a player a little bit, I imagine.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, like I said, I had to earn every single piece of my opportunity. I'm not 6'11", I'm not 6'7", 5'11" and a half on a good day. I'm just having a mindset of just having that blue collar mindset, like I mentioned earlier, showing up to practice every day. You can miss some shots, but you can't have a bad practice based on effort. I mean, that's just the biggest thing for us here at George Mason. We try to recruit to it. Energy level is everything. And it's not just the players, it's our managers, it's our coaches, it's everybody that's in the gym. And it's really been good for us.
What does energy look like in your practices then? Is it a lot of communication, a lot of interaction? What does it look like?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of anything, of everything. A little chaotic, a lot of communication. We chart high fives, we chart certain huddles, we chart who's diving on the floor. If a guy dives on the floor, everyone has to go run to him and sprint to him and help him off the floor. All those little things that we know at the end of the day, those are winning plays. Those are the things that get you through in certain moments when end of the game you could be down, but you've been in those situations so many times in practice. You don't look at the score. You just do what you do on a daily basis, and a lot of times it does favor you.
Charting high fives, do you have a good number? That's like somebody gets out of practice with this range of number. Is it a
So
good?
we chart high fives in conjunction with deflections. I don't want to give away too much sauce, but we live and die by deflections. What we try to do is we try to make sure that we give, when it comes to our PER system, which is our efficiency system, we reward high fives, but we also reward deflections. And so it's a combination of kind of both those two things that we try to chart in practice every single day. It's not a necessarily a every day, oh, I won the high five department. As coaches, we know who's participating in the little things and who's not.
Yeah, so we can't come out here with a correlation between this number of high fives and a great practice.
Yeah, no, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna do that.
I understand. Take us a little deeper with Patriot Pressure, if you don't mind. Give us a little bit more of the strategic mindset. You gave us the mindset overall of Patriot Pressure, but what type of strategies are we trying to do in terms of controlling the ball, taking care of the ball, so that it doesn't score on us, obviously?
Yeah, I think defensively, for one, again, I don't want to get too much into detail. I worked for Kevin Willard for 4 years. Kevin Willard worked for, obviously, Rick Pitino for a long time at Louisville and also with the Boston Celtics. One of the things that we did really well at Seton Hall, we pressed the ball, 2-2-1 pressed, and then we sat back in a matchup zone and just tried to let the offense figure out what the hell we were doing. I loved it, but what I did with my our defense here at George Mason is just added just a few more principles to it, and we really try to junk it up. Sometimes it's a soft press, sometimes it is a hard press, but when we do drop back, next thing you know, it's 14, 15 seconds left on the shot clock, and it just makes it really difficult to try to figure out what you're doing offensively. And that's really just what the main goal is. Try to be as good in the front court and be even better in the half court. If you look at our metrics, we were really good in protecting our paint. A lot of that just comes from just killing the clock and working as hard as we can to make sure that it's the toughest shot that you can get in the half court. And that's something we do every single day. We've got a drills called 24-second toughness. And we just try to be as perfect as possible in those 24 seconds and shell. No middle drives. You have to close out with high hands. You can't foul. No offensive rebound. If any one of those things triggers us, we start over. And sometimes guys are done in 24 seconds. Sometimes guys are on the floor for 5, 10 minutes. And it becomes something that when you're doing every single day, these guys get it in the game, and it's put a lot of pressure on our opponents.
Is that a team drill or an individual drill?
No, that's a team drill. That's just out of our shell drill, 4-on-4 shell.
Nice. Obviously, diving a little bit deeper than in terms of this Patriot Pressure concept. So, do you consider yourself more scout-based defensive coach or mastering more of a base coverage is the emphasis based on this Patriot Pressure?
No, I think we're never going to change who we are. That's going to be, you're going to see some sort of a dose. If it's 5 possessions or sometimes it's 15 possessions, I think that is very scout based because you've got some really good teams that maybe their playmaking ability or they have one or two individuals that can really just put pressure on you if you're putting too much pressure. And so it's going to be scout based, but the foundation doesn't change on who we are and how and what our approach is every single game with the way we guard.
I love it. I love this mindset. And your defense was good in your first year, but it took a massive leap into year two, finishing top 25 nationally and setting school records in field goal defense. So, what do you think between year one and year two really drove that improvement?
Yeah, I think for one, retention was everything. Bringing back Woody Newton, bringing back Darius Maddox, keeping Jalen Haynes, who was a first teamer in the foxhole, and redshirting him when everyone else, once they got the pass, played, continuing to help Jared Billups offensively to where he can play 30 minutes and be a starter because he's literally probably the best defender I've ever coached. When you have that type of a nucleus coming back that are able to then just help the new guys, your competitive spirit on a day-to-day basis, it just makes things so tough. And when you're that consistent and guys are taking pride in all the things that we know maybe not a lot of teams do, it gives you an edge. And the one thing I'll say about that group, no matter what the outcome of the game was last year, there wasn't really a game that we were like out of. We were always in every single game just because of the way we guarded. These guys knew it. And for whatever reason, man, these guys bought into it early and just stayed with it. It was a major piece of our success, just the consistency and the competitive spirit.
Yeah, you've referenced that a few times. So maybe can you connect that for us in terms of defending the ball in particular? What are some specific habits or principles do you emphasize daily in practice to maintain that level of competitive spirit, especially defending the ball?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. For me, how you earn minutes is going to be reflective of how hard you play on a day-to-day basis, right? In practice, and obviously when given the opportunity in the game. We try to recruit to it, to be honest with you. There's not anything tactically that we do. At the end of the day, you can have all the skill in the world, but if you're not going to get into somebody defensively, you can't play here at George Mason. That's who I was. That's what we've recruited to for the most part. I want the guy that wants to ask for a sub, not the guy that I have to take out of the game. I want the guy that's going to go and die for a loose ball and not worry about what happens, not the guy that's wanting style points for a sexy step back. That's who we've been. That's what we've recruited to. So again, there's no special thing that we do on a day-to-day basis in practice, and there's no secret sauce to it. I give these guys a lot of autonomy offensively, but the non-negotiables and the things that we do every day defensively, it's just the way of George Mason basketball, and these guys understand it and they live it every day.
I was going to ask you how this connects to your offensive system. So can you go a little bit deeper on that, this Patriot pressure, and then how does that connect with what you do on offense?
Yeah, we run a ball screen offense. Again, I've been very fortunate to where you talk about guys like Keyshawn Hall, who's now at Auburn, who's at UCF, Mari Kelly, who was really good for us in year one, Ronald Polite, who started for us at the point guard position and was an all-conference guy the year before I got here, Baraka Koji, who was an all freshman team who ended up going to Memphis. We've been very fortunate with some talented guys, and I was comfortable with running a ball screen offense. The reality is, with the way that we guard, the way that we defend, I give these guys a lot of autonomy. We run a lot of ball screen offense, a lot of five out. And again, the way we defend, it really predicates how we score on offense. I can't ask these guys to be top five in the country defensively, but then also be top five in the country offensively. We got a lot better this year because we were able to throw the ball inside to Jalen Haynes. That was a major piece of our ecosystem offensively. Jalen Haynes only played about 24, 23 minutes. We averaged 15 and 7. And I think the best version of Jalen Haynes is yet to come as he's headed to Cincinnati. Outplayed himself here at George Mason, and I'm happy for him. But from an offensive standpoint, nothing complicated, a lot of freedom, a lot of autonomy, and a lot of it is driven by the way we guard defensively.
Driven by the way you guard defensively in terms of it, your defense creates a little bit more unstructured possibilities for players in terms of playing versus unset defenses. Is that part of it?
Yeah, I preach to my guys all the time, man. If you guys can get stops, I don't look at me. Go figure it out on the other end. That's the reality of it. Obviously, we want the best shot we can get, and we played with a lot more IQ this past season than we played last year. I tell these guys all the time, just because I'm giving you autonomy doesn't mean you can't be a smart basketball player. Being unselfish, obviously understanding our spacing and just know who can do what in different situations. And so that worked for us this year. It's a completely different situation this year with 12 new players. I've got to be able to adjust. It was a little easier to teach the rest of the group in year two, just because half our team and three or four of our starters were on that previous year team that won 20 games. But I do think this year we're going to have to hone it in a little bit offensively, just because we've got a different set of personnel.
Do you consider 12 new players a complement to your program in OA?
I think it's a sliding scale of the landscape, but then also our success.
Yeah.
We graduated five, six guys, and then three or four guys moved on. And so that's what happens. I can't complain about it because there's 300 other teams in college basketball that are dealing with the same thing, more or less. But we had a very successful season last year, and it definitely made it easier in the portal to just be able to say, hey, this is the production we lost, and this is the minutes that we have, and trying to just mesh, obviously, NIL opportunities with just the basketball piece, it was huge for us.
You've done a heck of a job navigating that so far, and I'm sure it'll continue. And Coach, you referenced analytics a few times, some defensive metrics, deflections, etc. So maybe is there something defensively that you maybe didn't value 10 years ago, 5 years ago, that now is a number you value more?
That's a tough one, man, because there's just so many different things that you can look at and say, this is what equates to winning. This is what impacts winning. Personally, I've always been a believer of having a rim protector. And I was initially worried about us not having that in my first 2 years. I was very fortunate when I was at Seton Hall. We had two of the best shot blockers in the country, essentially. When I spent my time at Louisiana Tech, even in the Conference USA, we had a guy by the name of Janiyah White who was 7 foot, 7'1", and he protected the rim for us. And so, in my mind, even as a player, you love being that guy defensively where you get after it, but every once in a while, you're like, hey, man, if I blow this assignment, I know the big fella has my back. And so, coming into this thing here at George Mason, we weren't able to get that kind of an elite shot blocker. And so, what I would say is what I've found in teaching these guys really is just the pride that you have to take in making sure that you do your job and you win your assignment, more or less. That's the one thing that I'll say I've challenged my guys from an individual standpoint. We're going to have your back as a team, being in our gaps, all those different things, being in our spots, fifth defender. But at the end of the day, man, you've got to be able to keep the ball out the paint, keep the ball out of the middle. And that's something that we've done very well.
I was going to ask you that basically is without having a shot blocker, what parts of your defense became more of an emphasis and
You
more
got to keep
important?
got to keep the ball out the paint. I think that's as cliche as it gets in our sport. Some do it better than others, but for us, it's a non-negotiable. We don't have that second effort, weak side shot blocker, and so we've got to be able to prevent pretty much anything out of our inside of our paint. Got to defend the paint.
Very cool. And defensive excellence clearly starts with culture in your program. So maybe what are some specific methods that you do to bring buy-in to the Patriot Pressure system within your program?
It's a major part of our recruiting. I don't sugarcoat it. It's very transparent in my messaging when we recruit, because the last thing I want is for a guy to come here thinking, oh, they've got 35 minutes a game and I'm going to get a large portion of that. Yes, you will. But at the end of the day, just understand who you're replacing. You're replacing the Jared Billups, who Jared Billups did not, from a metric standpoint, he wasn't top five or top 10 in steals. He wasn't top five or top 10 in blocks, all the different things that you get rewarded for from a defensive standpoint. But he had enough respect from the coaches in our league, and which is why he was Defensive Player of the Year. And so the one thing I'll say is when you lose a Jared Billups, you have to be able to be the same type of defensive mindset of a team collectively. And so the one thing that I valued in evaluating a lot of these guys is we watched them on one end of the floor offensively. We made sure we watched them defensively and their understanding of how hard you have to play, understanding rotations, understanding closeouts, understanding all the little things that sometimes it makes a difference in the world. And it sure has for us. And we're going to continue that with the type of players that we recruited in year three.
You referenced shell drill as one way that you develop this mindset actually tactically on the court. What are some other things that you value in terms of practice drills or practice concepts?
It's a ton. I think it just comes down to your time of the year in which you're teaching. We're big on deflections. Again, for us, you've got to have in a game a minimum of 35 to 36 deflections. And so we try to incorporate that in practice. We're not necessarily over denying and getting all out of position and different things like that. But when you are guarding the basketball, you have to get into the basketball without getting beat. And so we work on that every single day. And like I said, our shell drill just incorporates a bunch of different things. It almost has to be perfect, which is unrealistic. But if you can get as close to what your principles are every single day and everyone's on the same page and communicating and knowing what's to be expected, it just makes the ecosystem and what we do in games a lot more fluid and makes my job a lot easier.
I love it. And you've emphasized different times the different structures that you teach defensively, whether non-negotiables or the different structures within shell, etc. So can you talk to us to the next level that they know the structure? What role does decision making play for an individual player within your defensive system?
Yeah, different from a defensive standpoint. There's just a lot of different principles. We've got, even from a rebounding standpoint, we've got our go guys, right? We've got our halfbacks, and then we've got our fullbacks. If you're 6 foot and 5'11", you're probably a fullback. You're a guy that has to sprint back, right? If you're a halfback, maybe you're 6'4", 6'5", 6'3", a guy that can go get a rebound once we've defended. But you also have to be in a position to make the right decision on whether you should go get that rebound or you should get your ass back, if that makes sense. All those different things, all those different metrics, we try to make sure we're competing on a day-to-day basis and really just emphasizing not too many things, but overly the same thing. We're big on fifth defender, big on blacking the post, which is doubling our post, regardless of who's guarding in the post. Jalen Haynes and Gio were probably the two biggest human beings in our league last year, but we still doubled the post with those guys because we never wanted to put them in foul trouble because they were so important to us. They obviously played minutes, didn't play together, but they had minutes that they played together. And so I was always trying to make sure that I kept those guys in the game, and our team just knew ball goes in the post, we're doubling, we're blacking the post. And so there's different things like that we try to work on a day-to-day basis to just build our consistency and our understanding, like you mentioned, just our IQ.
Of course, the other part defensively that's so important in the modern game is deciding how you're defending the 3-point line and what the philosophy is there. Can you outline that a little bit for us?
Yeah, I think that's very scout driven. That's very personnel driven. We're going to guard different guys in different ways. You're going to play 31 games and see over 300 different players, and every single one has a different type of closeout. You've got your Curry closeout, you've got your Paul George closeout, and you've got your Rondo closeout. I think it's safe to say people understand those three categories of what a closeout looks
Yeah.
like. And so that's how we defend the three as much as possible. And it's pretty simple.
And it's a decision more important than anything technique wise, but technique's important too, isn't it?
Yeah, I think technique is important. I think just having an understanding of who you are defensively, because what Woody Newton can do defensively is not the same as what Darius Maddox can do defensively. And that's the one thing that we try to take pride in. You are who you are and take pride in that, but just understand what that means for how you guard, whether it's one-on-one, it's a drive, guarding the closeout, all those different things matter. Woody Newton was such a good defender. We designated just how we guarded three to Woody hands, all those different things that our guys understood who they were, which helped them just understand who we were as a team.
I feel like that's an incredible insight, coach, in terms of just individualizing a little bit more the defensive part of it. And that traditionally we've done that on offense, and really good coaches are doing that on defense now. Can you take us a little bit deeper in terms of just that mindset and maybe where that philosophy for you came from?
Are we talking defense or offense here?
Individual defense and tailoring it to there's not one perfect technique for everyone, that individuals have to do some things differently on defense because they are individually different.
Yeah, I think again, a lot of what we do is based on how we practice. We compete at a high level. And when I say compete, we're charting certain competitions. We're playing one-on-one baseball. We're putting guys in a blender, and guys learn each other. And when you're learning each other, you're learning other type of players that you're going to eventually see. It's an everyday thing. Like I mentioned, there's a few things that we do literally, probably, I would say for 3/4 or 4/5 of the season. One-on-one baseball is one of them. I mean, honestly, it's a drill that you find yourself, and then we also get to learn who you are and try to figure it out together collectively. Because, like I said, your best closeout guy might not be necessarily your best perimeter defender because of size, because of length, all those different things, and just understanding how we can all exist within the same ecosystem and putting guys in the right spot. But it's something that we try to go at every single day and competing against each other and just really playing and learning just certain situations that there's 1,000 different things that comes up in the game. But if you're putting those situations as much as possible in practice against each other, competing, the competitive spirit solves a lot of that.
Absolutely. Can you take us through a little bit deeper what one-on-one baseball is?
It's baseball. You've got your defender, so it's one-on-one. You've got two teams. You've got a guy on offense. You got a guy on defense. He's baseline. You've got your offensive guy at the slot. You got a coach at the top of the key. Coach can drive it anywhere. The defense has to follow, but essentially it goes back to the offensive player. The offensive player has four dribbles, and then they're just playing one-on-one. If the offense scores, then that's not an out. Defense has to get three outs to get a point, and then to get off and rotate. That's what one-on-one baseball is.
Love it. Is the whole team at one end, or do you divide it up to multiple
No, no, no.
baskets?
It's basically green versus gold. So you
Okay.
got 6, 7 guys on one team, 6, 7 guys on the other team.
That connects back to competitive spirit, doesn't it,
Yeah,
coach?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Love it.
And we'll add that and take that to a whole nother level with 2-on-2 and eventually also 3-on-3 as well.
And play the same rules of baseball.
Yep.
Love it. Be a whole lot of coaches around the world playing baseball now, coach. Thanks for sharing. In terms of practice, then give us a mindset of kind of what your practice looks like then. Obviously, we're thinking a lot of it's defense, but how do you blend offense and defense within your practices?
Yeah, I think the first thing we try to do is we've been very lucky with being pretty injury free these 2 seasons. A part of that is just the way we warm up, just getting after it. Again, I talk about Patriot Pressure. We drill that to start practice with just our energy, kind of dummy 2-2-1 press offense. We'll start with that. And essentially, it's basically just a zigzag drill with our walk ons, et cetera, our guys guarding the basketball, jumping off the basketball. And we try to just lead these guys into just being refreshed. And we go right into some skill work. We'll transition skill work right into shell. We'll take a break. And then once we come back from shell, it's all offense. We play a lot. Early on, we're teaching. We're obviously fixing different things, talking through situations, different reads, and things of that nature. But we have about 3 or 4 segments in practice where we'll play 10 or 12 minutes nonstop. Like we'll stop and teach and correct every once in a while, but we're getting a lot of our conditioning in practice.
Love that. I love that. I love playing basketball to get better at basketball. So within that, when you did, you referenced if you stop it sometimes to coach. What would be something you would stop it for? And then how would that look?
Spacing is everything. Stick ball is everything. Learning what a good shot and a great shot looks like. The one extra is everything. And a lot of times we try not to stop unless it needs to be one of those situations where we need to talk about it because we always come back the next day, us as coaches or my assistants, we'll clip all those situations up and we'll start practice with watching it. It's a lot easier to be receptive to learning when the emotions and the adrenaline is a little bit more slowed down. And so our whole thing about development is not to try to embarrass, it's to try to teach and encourage. And a lot of times we find the good in making sure that message, sometimes it needs to be right away, but sometimes it needs to be the next day. So a lot of film watching. Like I said, we'll start practice with about 15 to 20 minutes of film from practice.
How does Coach Skinn look like in practice? Our visual of you now is that you're obviously intense, you're competitive, you're passionate within practice. Is that a fair assessment of what you look like based on you
Yeah, no,
sharing
I'm
this
I'm
style?
I'm very I love having fun, man. I know sometimes my face gives something different, but I'm a fun coach to play for. I always told myself when I play for some tougher or a little bit too tough coaches, that wasn't going to be me. This is a peaceful place, man. I want these guys having fun, and normally when you're playing the right way, it's fun. And the toughness is definitely there. The accountability is definitely there, but the most important thing is really just matching the positive energy that I expect from my players. I've got to be able to have the same approach.
What a great mindset. This is a peaceful place. That's beautiful. Coach, with that, then, you mentioned accountability. Let's first go to a drill, win or lose. Are there consequences, rewards? What's happening within that?
Yeah, absolutely. We chart wins and losses. That's part of our PER system. You could be the guy that's getting 8 rebounds and 16 points and 8 assists every scrimmage or every drill or whatever we do 5 on 5, but then you're 2-6 this week in competition. And so those things matter. Impacting winning matters. And sometimes less is more from an offensive standpoint, right? And so we do chart that and add that to our PER system. But everything is competitive. I mean, at the end of practice, turnovers versus team wins, all those different things that guys really hate. You want to talk about accountability. When you start hearing those moans and grumps at the end of practice, those guys want to avoid those moments. And the way we just hold them accountable at the end of practice, again, we're not the team that's going to be running for 30 minutes after practice. I don't believe in that. I think we get our running and our conditioning and a lot of the stuff that we do from a basketball standpoint. But there are certain non-negotiables, taking care of the basketball, making sure you're playing for your teammates. Those things will have you running a few extra sprints at the end of practice for sure.
But that's the flow of it. You're not stopping practice to run any sprints. You're doing it all at the end, right? Yeah.
We're waiting to the end of practice, and there's so many different variables that disrupts practice. I'm not going to be the guy that does it self-inflicting. You're trying to get to a 2 hour practice and you're focused on this one thing and you really just waste time for 2 hours. We'll save it to the end of practice and get what we need to get out of that.
You've obviously been a high level player. You've worked with high level coaches. You've been a long time successful assistant, now head coach. So, can you shed some light on some of the things that you find most successful in terms of communicating through video, communicating through film? You referenced sending guys some clips, you've referenced team film. What are some things that really stand out for you as being effective?
Yeah, I think visuals are everything. Visuals are everything, even words. We have a system here at George Mason in our locker room. There's literally everything that we live and die by, whether it's our philosophy, attitude, commitment, class, and family, whether it's the win-loss column in our league, all those different things. Because at the end of the day, it's a different landscape. It's a different day and age. These kids have, I want to make sure when my guys walk into the locker room for those 2, 3 hours, how to help this team. And so once you get past that first layer and we do watch film, we watch film every single day. We've got our teaching points, and a lot of it is positive. Some of it is negative. If we have a 15-minute video session, there might be about 15 to 20 clips. I would say 2/3 of that is positive. The other 1/3 is just making sure we avoid these type of situations. And me as a player, I know for one thing, I love the accountability of film. I was the guy that was trying to watch the film before I got to film because I didn't want to be embarrassed. But it's not a place of embarrassment, it's a place of learning. And we try to be as healthy as possible collectively with our team. And a lot of times we watch the film together, but a lot of those guys that are getting called out have already watched the film individually with a positional coach. Just so, again, that guy's not getting in his feelings and everybody else is taking it for what it's worth because it's literally everyone, somebody different every single day. And so film is a major part of our learning. It's a major piece of our scouting. We're a very scout-based team when it comes to our opponents. I worry a little bit less about what they run, a lot more about who they are.
Love it. Thanks for sharing that. And when you first took over, obviously an exciting time for you, but also you're very familiar with George Mason in a sense. So I'm curious, what were some priorities for you when you first took over? Again, beyond staffing, beyond players, we know we need to get those. What are some priorities that brought you back to your George Mason roots, so to speak?
Yeah, really, just maybe for the most part, I had a little bit of a cheat code, man. I tell people this all the time. I skipped a few steps as a head coach just because as a head coach, you have so many daunting tasks when you take on a job and cultivating some relationships, getting to know who's who, learning first names and trying to learn your team and all those different things. I was able to skip some of those just because a place like this, I spent 3 years as a player. I was always just going back and forth through different coaches and even some of the relationships I didn't have when I was a player, I developed when I was coming back. And really just those first couple of conversations of how excited everyone was for me, it was definitely something that, again, like I said, it was a little bit more organic than probably most situations outside of the recruiting of our players and obviously bringing on a staff. I also had a chance to really just go out to dinner and go out to lunch with people that I already knew and they just really just wanted to know how they could help the program and kind of move it forward. And that's what's made us successful.
That's very cool. Sharing that example of having that cheat code in place.
Yeah.
I want to dive deeper with the competitive mindset, having the chip on your shoulder, so to speak, because clearly you have that, you value that, you coach with that. You obviously recruit players that you want in your program, but even some of those players can become more competitive. Do you feel that way in your mindset that I can help a player become more competitive?
Yeah, I think so. I think as basketball players, as humans in general, you're always growing, you're always learning. You could be at an institution for 2 or 3 years and go somewhere else for your last year or two, and there's going to be things that you've never learned before. And it's no knock to the previous institution or the previous coach that you were just playing for. Everyone has a standard and everyone has different ways of teaching and developing. And absolutely, I think that there's going to be players that leave me that go learn certain things at certain places. That's just the way it works. But the one thing that we're not going to, it's never going to be a non-negotiable for us here is just how hard we compete and how hard we play, the intensity level. And sometimes guys think that this day was great for me and that's my barometer until you watch your teammate who already has a different barometer and you're like, holy shit, I've got to raise my bar. And that challenge and that accountability is a major piece of, what I try to teach to our guys every single day, man. If you think you're going hard, man, you can tap into something a little bit more. And that's really where the defensive mindset has come from. These guys are always competing. These guys are, again, we've tried to recruit to it. Sometimes personnel, you are who you are sometimes, and it's just very hard to get you to recreate yourself. But we try to just make sure we're recruiting as close as possible to who we are as a program.
I guess that's my other curious question about this is how you've refined your ability to be able to identify this in potential recruits and to be able to be sure that they have this type of mindset. What are some things that we can look for as coaches when we're trying to identify this?
Yeah, I don't think recruiting and I don't think evaluating is as complicated sometimes. You can watch a kid and see just certain things that he's doing in the game. You that guy that's literally just somehow, some way he's in every possession impacting winning. He might not score 20, he might not score 15, but if he's taking a charge, right? If he's getting rebounds, if he's staying in front of the basketball, if he's communicating, He's doing all these different things. Again, you can't have 13 guys like that, but you've got to be able to find a little bit of that in all the guys that you bring in. Even your best shooter, who might not be the best defensive player on your team, is he communicating? Is the effort level there? When he gets beat on an assignment, is he getting mad and pointing fingers? Is he being accountable for what he's doing? All those different things you can watch just over time, maybe not in one game, and maybe not in one quarter, but several games. The consistency and who that personnel is, it's not hard to find.
Yeah, good. I'm happy it's not hard to find because clearly you've found it and we'll keep finding it, I imagine, as well. And for you in this off season, what are some things that you're doing to keep yourself sharp, to keep yourself growing as a coach this off season?
Yeah, recruiting is number one. I'm not gonna lie to you, man. It's been you go through your season and you start to get to the finish line and you're just thinking about what's next and maybe getting a couple of days off and the season ends and it's like there are no days off because you're right back to it. At least for us, we've had to go replace 12 new players. And as we're trying to just figure some things out, we're trying to make sure we get these guys in, which we just did. And then now the real work begins in trying to mesh these guys together. Because again, I think that's become the new X and O's, to be honest with you, being able to bring guys together and learning different systems, guys that don't know each other. 12 is a
A
to
lot.
say the
It's
least.
a lot.
12 is a lot. And continuing to grow there and just the management and just keeping our ecosystem as
Coach,
positive.
just for maybe our clarity, it's June now, almost now. Do you have the 12 players or you're still working on them?
No, we're done. We're
Okay.
done. Yeah, we're done. Our guys just got on campus over the weekend, more or less, and starting summer school this week. And last 2.5 months, we've just been grinding, trying to fill this roster, and we're complete. So I'm happy about that.
The new normal, I guess, for a lot of programs. But 12 is definitely a lot. And so you've got to be excited. You've got them there. Now, what are some of the first steps as you indoctrinate these new players in terms of the George Mason philosophy and your philosophy?
Yeah, this summertime, I'm big on just individual work. I don't, such a long season. I need these guys to understand we're just trying to help them get better. I know some coaches that they start practicing in the summer, and we'll do a little bit of that, but we've got to learn each other first. And so we'll be big on just positional time. We'll have 3 or 4 guys in a group just working together positionally. And that's for me, the first 2 or 3 weeks, that's really what it comes down to. Helping these guys build confidence in different parts of their game, being in the gym with them. That sweat equity is everything when it comes to coaching and building and cultivating new relationships because the reality is we got these guys here. The portal speed dating. You still need to be able to then learn who they are and get them comfortable with who we are as a staff. And so that's what the month of June looks like. Once we get into July, we'll start teaching and just start laying some foundation offensively and defensively. But I try to keep the team oriented stuff away from the first couple of weeks of our summer.
That makes sense since you're trying to figure them out a little bit deeper as well in terms of what you can do or what they can't do in terms of those things. So that connects. Coach, maybe over your time in coaching since you played, etc., what is something that's really shifted or changed in your mindset about coaching over the time that you've been involved in the game?
Coaching. Honestly, man, just coachability, to be honest with you, because there's so many different variables now that exist that never existed. So many different kids have so many different agendas that they might not know is actually what they're giving out. You throw NIL in there, being able to balance. I'm a big fan of NIL, right? A huge fan, but also understanding that development is still important. Being coachable is still important for some of the guys that we have a chance to coach. Maybe some of those guys have an opportunity to go play at the next level. And so being able to help them understand, yes, it's okay to take money, it's okay to make some money, but understanding you have a chance to be a guy that can play for the next 7 to 10 years and being coachable, right? Being held accountable, all those different things factor into this landscape and just have an understanding of the delicate balance of what we need to do and what our jobs are as coaches. It's to help these young men be able to reach the best version of themselves. And so I find that we do a lot more coaching for 12 months versus back when I played. We saw our coaches for 5 or 6 months max, and then you were on your own. We're helping these guys year round, whether it's in the summer with the 8 weeks we get with them, whether it's off the court and just trying to help these guys manage the things that they now have an opportunity to do, which is make money. It's all year round coaching. And I don't think in college basketball that's always been the case. And so adjusting to that, I would say is something that every coach is dealing with in this landscape.
Coach, you've been awesome. Appreciate you sharing with us so much. And I got to ask because you got hashtag Team 60 on your sweatshirt here. Can you explain that to us?
Yeah, Team 60 is just pretty simple. It's the 60th team in George Mason history. I get asked all the time about our Final Four run, and sometimes it gets a little bit redundant. I want each team to have their own story, be able to build their own legacy. And it was something we actually started last year with Team 59. And the irony behind that is Team 59 was able to do some things that has never been done here at George Mason. And so I want these guys to have their own thing, and Team 60 is just what that is.
Brilliant. Love it. Coach, can't thank you enough. We're all so excited to continue to watch you at George Mason, and best of luck for next year's season.
All right. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Thank you.